American Born Chinese, published in September 2006, is a graphic novel illustrated and written by Jin Lin Yang. This novel is followed by three main storylines featuring Chinese stereotypes in the United States. The storylines include the following characters: the Monkey King, Jing Wang, and Qin Qi. Jin Wang's storyline is the second out of the three discussed throughout this comic. He goes through many drastic changes in his lifestyle as an attempt for recognition and acceptance. His journey allows him to explore his racial background, his true cultural identity, and finally to find acceptance in himself. The revolution of Jin Wang throughout the comic helps the audience visualize how meaningless comments lead to affecting people's mental state and their way of accepting themselves, making them feel insecure, worthless, and changing themselves to fit in. We can start visualizing the changes he goes through from the second chapter, where he makes an appearance into the comic, where it all begins in a school setting. When he gets introduced to the class, the racist judgment of the Asian culture begins. This is seen on page 37. The teacher mispronounces his name. She says Jing Jiang instead of Jin Wang, and corrects herself only after Jin recalls his actual name. Even worse, the teacher incorrectly informs the class that he came from China, when in reality he came from San Francisco. By doing this, the author gives the readers an impression of the racism Jin faced with Americans being very judgmental with Asians. Then, on the following page 38, racial discrimination is mentioned by one of the students when Timmy states, "My mama says Chinese people eat dogs." The teacher then responds with an answer that started to trigger Jin's emotions when she says, "In fact, Jin's family probably stopped that sort of thing as soon as they came to the United States." This clearly shows that the teacher not only thinks Chinese culture is wrong, but also that by being in America, Jin is now a better person. After being made fun of his culture and identity in his first class, lunchtime came along and more of his peers began to bully him. Jin is seen eating dumplings, which is not a very common food in America, and gets made fun of for eating them. Establishing the fact that the teacher did not stand up for Jin in the first class. Basically, he felt as though his life was now steered by the teacher's weak instruction to the class, and therefore the bullies took advantage, mocking him. Later on, the bullies finally walk away and say, "Come on, let's leave Bucktooth alone so he can enjoy Lassie." He gets named Bucktooth as it is an East Asian stereotype in America, and Lassie is a popular fictional dog character which he mentions to embarrass Jin's culture of eating dogs. Getting called names and being made fun of his true identity, Jin changes his lifestyle in an attempt for acceptance by his peers and the American society. On page 44, we start visualizing changes in Jin's food and attitude. The first sign of change is when he is seen eating a sandwich, no longer dumplings, all due to the racist remarks and comments he had received. A page ahead, page 43, another Asian that goes by the name of Wei Chin is introduced to the class. Once again, the teacher needed correcting when pronouncing his name, which was the exact same issue that happened with Jin. Moving to page 44, a picture shows Jin sitting alone eating a sandwich, and from his facial expressions you can tell that he is unhappy. We see the second change in Jin's lifestyle as his attitude and personality begin to alter from being culturally driven to making changes just to feel socially accepted. With 2 months having passed, he was not ready to be in Wei Chin's position again. Wei Chin was avoiding the Americans as much as possible and wanted to be friends with only one of the Asians in his school, Jin. While trying to introduce himself to Jin, he started off by saying, "You're Chinese, aren't you?" He says these words in Chinese, and this triggers Jin as he responds with, "You're in America, speak English." Wei Chin then attempts to speak English but sounds more like Chinglish when he says, you Chinese person, and that is when Jin finally responds with a short answer, "Yes," trying to end the conversation as fast as possible. The relationship eventually takes a turn and mends. Jin and Wei Chin become the best of friends and both begin having crushes. It is obvious to say that Wei Chin is very persistent about his Asian image and begins to date the only Asian girl, Suzy Nakamura. On the other hand, Jin begins acting more and more like an American, and he develops feeling for Amelia Harris, the most typical American girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. He notices her with Danny and becomes jealous unknowingly that they are siblings. Jin decides to change himself as he believes that is the only way he will feel accepted, especially by Amelia. On page 101, he is seen thinking about changing his haircut from a bowl cut, which is a well-known Chinese haircut, into a style just like Danny's. He ends up changing it purely for the sake of others. In conclusion, the author tried to portray the majority of Asian struggles by using Jin and Wei Chin as an example of being of a different race in American society. He does this by showing various situations where the characters were being bullied for being from a different ethnic background than the majority around them. Jin was able to adapt to his surroundings by changing emotionally and physically. By doing this, he had more self-esteem since he was no longer viewed as Asian, but more as an American, and therefore felt accepted.